For this video, we are going to be talking about the advantages and disadvantages from both the Continental Army, which are the colonists run by George Washington, and then from the best military in the world in 1776, the British Army. We're also going to be talking about the Battle of Bunker Hill, so make sure that you guys are taking great notes. When the Revolutionary War first started, the Continental Army did not have a uniform. So when the uniforms finally were created by George Washington himself, he gave them blue jackets with the white or cream colored pants, while the British military, the redcoats, obviously had on their red coats, their red jackets as part of their uniform. So that was the main difference, or the easy way for you to tell the difference between the British military and the Continental Army, was through the color of their jackets, red and blue. The Continental Army had lots of disadvantages. First, it had absolutely no navy. Most of the troops were untrained soldiers, and these soldiers were basically farmers with muskets. They had few or little cannons and cannon gunpowder. So we were down on weapons, our men were not up to par, and we had zero ships for a navy. On the flip side, we were fighting on home territory, and we were fighting for our freedom. So that motivating factor of fighting to free yourself is very powerful. As you guys obviously know, we win the Revolutionary War, so that plays a huge advantage for the Continental Army. And we also have George Washington. George Washington is an excellent leader, and we'll talk more about him in the upcoming week. But these two things were huge advantages for the Continental Army. On the opposite side of this war, you have the British Army with their highly trained, experienced soldiers who fight for a living. They had plenty of weapons and supplies. They didn't have to worry about where their muskets were going to come from or where their cannons were going to come from. They had the most powerful navy in the world, not just against the colonists, but in the world. In 1779, for example, the French had 63 naval ships, Spanish had 58, but the British had 90. So they had the biggest and the best navy in the world, the biggest and the best army in the world. However, they did have some disadvantages working against them. They were fighting far from home. They were fighting here in North America when they're from England, 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. So that could be rough on troops. They also had less reasons to fight. They're not fighting for their homeland. They're not fighting for their freedom. They're fighting because that's their job. That's what they were told to do. So they didn't have that emotion behind it. And they risked constant attack because they weren't familiar with the land. They didn't know the layout. They weren't familiar with the rivers and the valleys as well as the colonists were. So they could be attacked from any point at any time. So the Battle of Bunker Hill happens after the Battle of Lexington and Concord and Fort Ticonderoga, but before the Declaration of Independence is actually written. So we're talking about June 17, 1775, and this is happening in Boston. This painting is a great depiction of what war was like. You're marching in a straight line, you're stepping over people that have fallen in front of you, you're not breaking your formation, and you're just marching straight into the battle, facing your enemy. You're not hiding, you're not going to be a coward, but you're going to face your enemy head on, and you're going to march straight through. The Battle of Bunker Hill was rough on the colonists. They were running short on supplies, they were losing a lot of men, and the British just kind of kept on coming. They were starting to surround the area that they were. So in a very famous line of the Battle of Bunker Hill, you have the Colonel William Prescott from the Continental Army screaming out, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." Basically, don't waste your gunpowder. We're short on gunpowder, so make sure that when you're firing, you're going to make this bullet count. You have to be incredibly close to them in order to ensure that you're going to have a direct hit instead of firing when they're 200 or 300 feet away. Even with Colonel Prescott's idea of not firing until you see the whites of their eyes, the British win the battle. However, they lose over 1,000 soldiers, which is a lot for a very short battle, and a battle against the inexperienced Continental Army. This is kind of when Britain begins to realize that the Patriots are not just simply going to roll over and go away and follow whatever the king and parliament wants. This is when they realize that the patriots, the colonists, the Continental Army, they're going to fight. They're going to fight for their freedom, and they're going to fight hard. And even if it seems as though they have nothing going for them, they don't have a well-organized army, they have zero navy, it's not going to be easy. And Britain wasn't just going to come here and take over. They were actually going to have to fight to maintain the colonies, while the colonists are fighting to obtain freedom. So you are done with this video if you're able to answer the following 4 questions. What are the advantages of both the British and Continental Army? What are the disadvantages of the British and Continental Army? What occurred during the Battle of Bunker Hill? And then finally, what is the importance of this battle? So make sure you're able to answer these questions, and make sure that you complete your blog as well before coming into class. And I will see you guys tomorrow.